The Morgan Thomas Show. Brought to you by Black's Tire Inc.
What's up, everyone? It's The Morgan Thomas Show. I'm your host and producer, Morgan Thomas. Joining me tonight is my good friend and co-host, Big Al. Well, wait a minute. Big Al's not here yet. We're trying to get him into the chat right now. But as you can see, we got myself, Morgan Thomas, host and producer on the left-hand side. And then we've got Houston Burnett. Welcome, Houston, to the show tonight.
Yeah, when Big Al can't make it, I just have to shoulder the load. I got to put the team on my back and carry it. Let's go.
Well, we're trying to get Big Al in. He pops up, no camera, no microphone. He can get in the comments, but that's all we can see of him. So unfortunately, no Big Al as of yet. But I know you guys, this is why you guys tune in, is because of Big Al, and that's mainly it. But we will try to get him in. Hopefully he's watching. Maybe he gets to watch tonight. But we're still going to have a great show. Thank you again if you're watching over on Facebook or YouTube, Twitter, Periscope, wherever you're watching. Oh, by the way, tonight we are live streaming because it's Tuesday night. We moved over to the Roar's Facebook page. So thank you, Ben and Deb and everyone over at the Roar, for allowing us to be a part of your page tonight. And hopefully in the next couple of weeks coming forward throughout the off season, like Houston said, we're just going to try to keep it going and maybe work our way to the Christmas party at the end of the year. Hopefully we can get in the good graces with the people over at the Roar. But again, thank you so much for joining in. Looks like we got Kevron and we got Bill in. Bill's already asking about Big Al. Al, we hope you're out there. We see you trying to get connected, but if he doesn't get in, apologize. Maybe we'll get him in next week, or maybe this is it. Maybe we just kick him off. But no, I'm just kidding, Al. We love you, and we do miss you a lot, man. So Houston, we're back at it. I hope your week was good. What week is this now, man? Is this week two, week three of, with the baby here?
No, we're over a month now.
Whoa.
Yeah, I know. We're over a month, but I can't tell. All the days have kind of meshed together. I don't know what time it is. I feel like I've seen every hour of the day. And this is the best I could do right now. So to everyone at WCCP, sorry. I look like a disheveled father because I am.
Well, I know they don't care, but we are appreciative of you coming on and being a part of the show. I know it's a big load right now as you're trying to learn how to, navigate the dad waters there. But again, we appreciate it. And again, we appreciate everybody over watching and listening. If you are new to the show and you haven't seen us on Tuesday nights, or maybe you're watching us for the first time, normally we do 8:30 p.m. on Monday nights. But we moved it over to Tuesday so we could be a part of the Roar and not conflict with some other things that the Roar has going on. And we talk all things Clemson football, basketball, baseball, athletics in general, softball, women's basketball, men's basketball, anything we can, really, anything that's hot topics of the week. And we also get your comments in as well. We're not just a show where Houston and Alan and I just talk about whatever. We are also a show where we want to get in your comments and emotional outbursts and concerns or frustrations or even excitements and things you're looking forward to. So get in the chat. Make sure you let us know where you're listening from, where you're watching from, and how long you've been a Clemson fan. And then if you have any questions throughout the show, or if you want to answer the questions that we pose throughout tonight's show, please get in, because we will give you a shout out and we will answer your questions, or at least attempt to do so as best as possible. Again, we're going to still try to get Al. Normally it's three of us, myself, Big Al, and Houston. We're going to try to get Al in if we can later on, but we're going to go keep chugging along. And before we get into anything, we got a couple of really good questions tonight that we're going to start off on. But before we get into anything, let me tell you about our main show sponsor, and that is our primary sponsor of Black's Tire Inc., family owned and operated since 1971. If you need new tires, brakes, alignments, tire repair, or just looking for a friendly professional to help you answer any questions, check out Black's Tire Inc., located 1415 East Main Street, Westminster, South Carolina. Give them a call. You see the number on there, 864-647-9292, blackstireinc.net. Dale and Preston have been family friends of ours, and we go there, and we would not tell you about a place where we don't use them for our services, for our tires. My family does, Alan's family does. And so we'd appreciate if you go tell them. If you go there and get them to check out your car, tell them that the Morgan Thomas Show sent you. But Houston. So this week's been busy for me. Started a new position at my job, so kind of learning the ropes there. Hopefully don't screw it all up, but still had some time after work to kind of jot down some notes and some things that have been going on with Clemson football. We didn't have a show last week because national championship game, we wanted to watch that. So with the national championship game behind us, I know one of the questions I didn't write this one down. This is not on our list. I'm going off script, as you know I normally do. So you got to be ready. But I'm going to ask the Clemson fans out there in the chat as well. Is that Alabama team a team that this year's Clemson team, and I'm not talking about previous year's Clemson teams, but I'm talking about this year's Clemson team. Could anybody have beaten them? Specifically, could Clemson have beaten them?
But personally, I don't think so. I think the last 2 years have proven that there is a specific type of offense that needs to be run. And last year, LSU ran it. They had 4 elite wide receivers, a great running back out of the backfield, and a great tight end. And then this year, you see the same thing in Alabama. Mac Jones wasn't anything necessarily to write home about, but when you have the elite talent at wide receiver, Devontae Smith is a generational talent at wide receiver. He was unbelievable. And I think the first pass that he caught at the beginning of the game was just a screen. And he was able to turn that into like a 15-yard gain with 2 guys that had an angle on him. I was shocked. Alabama would have won regardless of who was playing, whether it was Clemson, whether it was Ohio State, Notre Dame, LSU, the 95 Bears. I don't know. They were going to win that night. They were going to win. And I think Alabama, this was their year to do it.
You know, I tend to feel the same way. My only concern is that when you're the losing team or the team that doesn't make it all the way to the top or maybe, you know, doesn't even make it to the national championship game, it's very easy to take, in my opinion, the easy way out and say, well, that team was the best ever. That team played a perfect game. And I really don't think it's, you know, I might be close to being playing a perfect game, but I think it comes to game plan and coaching, a lot of it, because I don't think Mark Childress and I have talked many times. I don't think Ohio State was, 21 points better than Clemson as far as on paper. But when the game was played, something happened. Something different happened. It looked like they were struggling to keep up, right? And I don't think that Ohio State necessarily played a perfect game, but I do hear fans and friends of mine say, well, Ohio State just played a perfect game. Clemson was never going to win. Well, I do think they did a lot of things well, and I think it's because of their game plan. I don't think they played a perfect game by any means, because I think you fall in the trap of, you say Ohio State played a perfect game, that's why they beat Clemson. But we also, including myself, and I'm gonna be a self-reflector here. I said the same thing about LSU the previous year. Oh, they were the best team ever. They played a perfect game. Nobody could have ever beat them that night. And maybe that's true too. But I don't know. You just don't fall into the trap of it's always, well, they were perfect. They played perfect. They were the best team ever. Because we said Clemson was the best team ever when they went undefeated. Then everybody said LSU was the best team ever when they beat Clemson. And now we're saying Alabama is the best team ever, because they beat out Ohio State. So you got to be careful. I'm just saying, I don't want to fall in that trap of thinking that they can't be beaten. But definitely when you watch that game, knowing that you've got Najee Harris and Devonta Smith, who really deserve the Heisman. I had doubts before, but after watching him multiple games, like especially in the playoffs, I mean, he deserved it. And so they had multiple ways to attack. And, I think it would have taken, some people in chat are already saying it, I think it would have taken a very, very good game plan to hang with Alabama. It would have been, you'd have to not make any mistakes, almost play a perfect game yourself to try to beat them. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a difference between a couple of the teams. You look at LSU. I think Clemson could have very well beaten that LSU team last year. It had a couple breaks gone Clemson's way. You also look at it, Jamar Chase was playing out of his mind that night. Kind of was one of the things of like, the perfect storm. I wasn't going to say they're the best team or anything like that. It's just you were playing a great offense with a great offensive coordinator in basically their home stadium for the national championship game. That's just kind of how it was. Ohio State, they've been sitting with this 2019 Fiesta Bowl loss for over a year now. They had a great game plan, a great offensive mind. They laid it to Clemson's defense. Clemson came out listless, didn't help themselves. They weren't perfect. I wouldn't say they're the greatest team ever. Clemson definitely didn't help themselves.
Right.
Ohio State, yeah, they didn't do that. With Alabama took that team that beat Clemson by 21 and hammered them. It wasn't even close. And I think the biggest difference that I see between LSU and Ohio State and those two teams that ran this up-tempo, just chucking it down the field, well, Alabama was able to do that too, just up-tempo. And then when they wanted to, they switched and gave the ball to Najee Harris, and they just crammed it down Ohio State's throat with no stopping them. They couldn't. So you had two sides of the ball. You could run literally two different offenses, and they could do it at will. And that's why I think Alabama, I'm always a little bit hesitant of saying anyone's the best team ever, but Alabama has a right to at least say, hey, look at what we did.
Right. Yeah, and let's get in the chat and let's post up some comments we got here. So Philip Medlin, I'm a Clemson fan, but the Tigers were the third best team in the playoffs. Ohio State would have beaten Clemson if played again. Alabama would have beaten the Tigers for sure. I can't really disagree with that. I mean, I think it all worked out the way that the teams were. I think, as we mentioned, I think a couple of weeks ago, when you have something that is a concern against ACC opponents, it is going to be a black eye when you get into the playoffs. And we very early on in the season were scratching our heads about the fact that Travis Etienne was struggling to get 100 yards rushing each game. It was not easy for him to get 100 yards rushing. Do we think it was Etienne's problem? No. Really, we think it was the offensive line. But when there's smoke, there's fire, if you will. And in the sense of Clemson not being able to run the ball, like you said, down their throat, whereas you had Trey Sermon able to do that against Clemson, and then Najee Harris able to do that against Ohio State. And I think it could have been a little bit closer of a game if you had Trey Sermon in there the entire time, but that's why you play the game. I mean, you never know what's going to happen, and injuries are one of those things. I would rather, that's kind of something that just happens on the field of play. I hate it when somebody gets out of the game for a targeting, whether it's Shaun Wade. Now, Ohio State fans are going to be like, well, you can't say excuses because of Shaun Wade the previous year. I get it. And I feel for you there. I didn't want to see Shaun Wade leave, even though I knew it was the rules. I really didn't want to see James Skalski leave either, because in that sense, you had James Skalski basically Clemson going from their number one general on defense to their third stringer because Jake Venables was injured. He hurt his shoulder. So, but I do think it all worked out. The best team won. The second best team finished second, and the third best team finished third. Does it make you want to go back against having an expanded playoff, considering how it all shook out?
No, not at all. I think we should expand the playoff to 8 at least. I know that people are sick of the same 4. Well, look, if it's going to be the same 4, if that's how the system is built, then at least give 4 other teams an opportunity. Like we can't say without a shadow of a doubt that it would have played out that Notre Dame, Clemson, Ohio State would have all won. Texas A&M was playing their best ball at the end of the season and didn't get a shot. Same with Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma would have given a lot of people surprises, including Clemson and Ohio State. Oklahoma was playing really good ball at the end of the season. Same with Cincinnati. I know Cincinnati lost to Georgia and whatever, but if we're doing a system that I think would be fair, is at least have the best group of 5 opponent, make it to the playoffs if you do an 18 playoff. And I think you should expand it, no questions asked. I know there's contractual agreements, but when this 14 playoff contract is up after the 25 season, expand that sucker to 8.
We've also got some people in here. Let's see. Michael Shu OSU exploited us on the deep ball more than anything. Bama's secondary was better than ours and didn't give up those plays. I did feel like Bama's defense was better. I think, to be honest with you, that's probably one of the worst Brent Venables defenses I've ever seen in my life. And he probably is not sleeping to this night thinking about how bad his defense was that night, just because you just don't see that from Brent Venables. I don't know Brent as a person for sure, but I know as intense as he is on the field, there's no way that guy is sleeping well at night, knowing that, I mean, when you go rewatch that game, Houston, I mean, Landon Sanders is like looking around confused. James Skalski is like yelling at people to get back into formation. Miles Murphy, Justin Maskell, not in formation, not even onto the line of scrimmage before the ball is even snapped. Hey, one of the 39-yard touchdowns from Trey Sermon, none of the players up front were even in alignment of where they needed to be, in position. And so I know that has to haunt Brent Venables. I don't necessarily think it was playing better as far as skill goes. I think Clemson's defense is one of the best skilled defenses, but it didn't really seem like they were very ready. And the coaching staff, I say this with love because the coaching staff mentioned, and Dabo Swinney himself said they got out-coached.
Yeah, I think the thing that any Clemson fan needs to realize is that Brent Venables, and when he sees something like this happen, he's not stupid. You look at what he did going into the 2019 season when we were undermanned on our personnel coming after that Power Rangers defense with Christian Wilkins, Dexter Lawrence, and company. And we switched to a three-man front. Now, I've spoke out against a three-man front now that we have depth in our trenches. But initially, that was something that really confused a lot of defenses, at least for the first, 14 some odd games of 2019, and then finally got exploited in that national championship game against LSU. I trust Brent Venables will make the proper tweaks to make them, especially with what's coming back. Hint, what we move on to some more questions tonight. But I think he'll be just fine.
Yeah, I know we can keep going on this for a long time because there's a lot to still deconstruct from that previous game that Clemson had. Not a game you want to see finish the way that it was finished, but it is what it is, and that's what we have to deal with. Before we go into our questions for tonight, let me tell you about a couple of other sponsors that we have. One of those is the Charleston Sports Pub, 359 College Avenue, Clemson, South Carolina, downtown Clemson. Not only do they have one in downtown Clemson, but they have one in downtown Greenville as well. So if you're in the upstate, Greenville or Clemson, go check them out. As you can see there, not only do we dine there, but Clemson legends dine there. And go check out the Charleston Sports Pub of Clemson. Again, is a friend of ours. Perry is the owner there. Let him know that the Morgan Thomas Show sent you and get some good grub there for lunch or dinner. You'll have great atmosphere as well. The one downtown Houston has a golf simulator where you can play Pebble Beach and pretend it feels like you're really there. So I would say go check it out. They have a lot of cool games there, a lot of things for you to do. And we even did a live show there, great atmosphere. So, we recommend it. Let them know that the Morgan Thomas Show sent you. Also, our gear here that we're wearing, my jersey, Deshaun Watson, and the polo that Houston has on is from Tiger Sports Shop. That's tigersports.com. We don't just dress for success. We TS for success, tigersports.com. So check it out. Go there. They have 2 locations, downtown Clemson and on Tiger Boulevard. But if you're nowhere near there, you can always shop on tigersports.com. So go check them out there too. For all your Clemson needs. Reason why I go to Tiger Sports Shop is because they literally have everything you need. I mean, from hats to jerseys to shirts, pullovers, they socks, they got masks, they got all kinds of stuff for a Clemson fan, and they have their own personalized apparel as well. This is obviously a Nike jersey. What do you got there, Houston?
So I believe I have my Columbia purple polo. My wife got this for me for Christmas. Great nice shirt, really breathable. I'm debating on whether or not. See, I know I have my stash of shirts that I wear for the show. Now I don't know as time goes on whether I'm bring this out in the season next year at any point. But this is really nice, really breathable. Go check out our friends over at Tiger Sports Shop.
Yeah, we appreciate their support for sure. I know you're getting in the chat and you're saying, okay, we've got Morgan, we've got Houston, but this is the Morgan Thomas Show with Big Al. Where is Big Al? Well, I've sent him a link. I've sent him 2 links now so far. Neither one of them have worked. I'm going to send him one more. So Big Al, if you're listening here, I've copied and pasted a third link for you. I'm going to send it to you. Go check out your email, Big Al, if you're listening. I know people are like, this is nuts. But we want to get our Big Al back on the line. And if he can't, then we'll just say he was out sick. But again, thank you so much for tuning in. If you're on Facebook or YouTube or watching us for the first time over on The Roar, we normally do Monday nights. We're doing Tuesday nights now so that we can be a part of The Roar as long as there's no games going on. So that's the catch there too. And there will be a couple of games coming up this week or next week, excuse me. So we'll only stream to our regular Facebook page, which is the Morgan Thomas Show. So go check that out. All right, so Houston, let's start with a couple of questions here. Some of these questions I already posted onto the description in the video, so you can be ready for that. But recently, 2 Tigers were named to the ESPN way too early All-American list. This was as of today, actually. Chris Lowe from ESPN, he's a senior writer there, he put down Miles Murphy and Brian Bresee, 2 of Clemson's nice defensive linemen, freshman defensive linemen this year. And here's what he wrote. Injuries at the defensive end position forced Clemson to play younger players in 2020, including Murphy. He showed the kind of promise everyone was predicting when he signed with the Tigers. As a true freshman, the 6'5", 275-pound Murphy led the team with 12 tackles for loss and also had 8 quarterback pressures. Murphy has everything it takes to blossom into one of the top defenders in the country in 2021. All right, so that was about Miles Murphy. Great stuff there. Yeah, I mean, of course, it was amazing to see him play this year. And then we had Brian Bresee, rated as ESPN's top defensive tackle prospect in the country. Bresee stepped right into the Clemson starting lineup and tied the team lead with 11 quarterback pressures. He also had 6.5 tackles for loss, including 4 sacks, and gives the Tigers a dominant presence in the middle of their defensive line. So we're going to talk about the entire defense as a whole as we keep going. We're going to build on this. But just starting with these 2 guys, what are your thoughts that they are in that way too early? You think that's appropriate for those 2 gentlemen?
Yeah, absolutely appropriate. They played, and I think Bresee's only going to get stronger. You think about part of the reason why Bresee's numbers were down is because Tyler Davis was out, and Brian Bresee was commanding a lot of those double teams. So you think about a full-strength defense, especially if you come out in a 4-man front this year, that's going to free up players like Bresee and Murphy. And if somebody wanted to break out like a Maskell, Xavier Thomas, KJ Henry, it's going to be hard to stop. Depth on the defensive line is going to be incredible, and I think it's going to just be an even better year for the likes of Murphy and Bresee.
Yeah, I like Murphy and Bresee for sure. I think that defensive line is going to just get even better than they were last year, and they were a pretty good defensive line for sure. I like Murphy a lot. I think Clemson has always done really well with developing defensive line talent for really decades, if you really look at it. We talk about wide receiver U and all these things. Defensive line U is really what I would love to call Clemson because they really do churn out some great ones. And there was actually something on Bleacher Report recently about a look back at the defensive line or the NFL draft class with those 3 defensive linemen from Clemson that were drafted in the first round. And those 3 guys have done a very good job. Dexter Lawrence leading the way. They gave him great accolades, great review for the past 2 years. He's been dominant for the Giants there. So those Tigers, it's good to see the Tigers playing on Sunday and doing well as well. But the question that I wanted to add to that too is now that we know that they're basically returning every starter, all 11 starters and Xavier Thomas, is there any defensive player that you think that could be, or any player in general, let me just say player in general, that could be a national surprise, like somebody that might become an All-American or maybe first team All-ACC that's not Bresee or Murphy?
I mean, that's kind of hard to say, given the fact that we have Clemson has several players that we weren't expecting coming back, like Xavier Thomas or Darion Kendrick, someone like that, a veteran like that, who could definitely use this and build on it. XT is one healthy year away from getting back to being this, superstar freshman. The height that he brought in, he's a healthy year. He wasn't playing healthy this year. He gets healthy and plays to his ability from his freshman year. He gets back on track to being on that All-American status. Same with Darion Kendrick. If he can just get in his head in the game, I think certain people that aren't necessarily playing as much this year, like a Fred Davis or an RJ Mickens, or even some of our freshmen that are coming in, like Peyton Page or someone like that, especially like my guy Casey Krieg in the comments mentions bringing a 4-man front into the mix. I think they will do that. I think it's the smartest thing to do, especially that our last couple of losses have been Clemson's front getting gashed, and I think that'll be helped in part of a 4-man front. Well, you do that, then you are able to play not only Brzee and Tyler Davis, but Peyton Page and some of those other guys like Trey Williams and DeMonte Capehart, which are other names that are I think could blossom into superstars.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think that Clemson's defense is, RJ Young said this recently on Twitter, is just that it cannot be understated the impact of talent plus experience. And now Clemson has that. We talk about the flaws that happened last year. These guys are just going to be 1 year better. They're going to be a little bit more experienced. So those flaws that happen, they're going to be able to work on it even more. And even when you say guys like Darion Kendrick, and a lot of people give him some flack for how the passing game was in the Ohio State game. And it wasn't just one person. It wasn't Darion Kendrick messing up, because we all know this. We shouldn't have to say this every single week or even every single year. But Brent Venables' defenses forces the cornerbacks to play on an island. When you play on an island, there are going to be times where they're behind you a little bit, or they're beside you, or they've got more space from you. And that's why you need to have safeties that understand what's going on. And if you go back and watch that Ohio State game, Landon Zanders, Nolan Turner, not one of their best graded performances by far. Nolan Turner didn't show up till the second half and got burnt twice. Landon Zanders was a little bit confused just right out the gate. But I say that to say with hope and confidence that this will be another year for these guys. Even Nolan Turner is going to come back, and he's going to use that eligibility waiver there because of COVID with the NCAA. So he can come back, and everybody's going to be a little bit better. I'm really looking forward to the guy that was hoping to be a starter this year, but Travis Etienne came back. I'm looking forward to Lynn-J Dixon. Seemed like when he got the ball, now take it. You're a guy standing behind a guy who's been ahead of you this entire time. Could you be frustrated? Yeah, you could be pretty frustrated. Could you be ready to get out, especially in the environment of the transfer portal years, or the year that we're in with transfer portal? Yes, you could be ready to get out. If you got the ball, would you just be like haphazardly, okay, well, I'm going to be out here for my 1 or 2 plays and go sit back down? Yeah, you could feel that way too. There's a lot of things that go on between your ears that could really mess you up in a year like this. But I didn't see that from Lynn-J Dixon. I saw him come out there. I saw him run hard every single time he got the ball. I saw him have a ton of yards after catch. I saw him do things between the tackle. Even when Travis Etienne was having a hard time doing it, he was able to find something just because of his style's a little bit different, just because of his pace with his feet are a little bit different. And so I look forward to seeing what Lynn-J Dixon can do in 2021. Obviously, I can't not put this guy down there, Justin Ross. I mean, I think if he gets cleared, now here's the thing. They came out with an article recently, this is on TigerNet, that says he is coming back, but there's still no set timetable for his medical release. So you got to take that with some caution there. We don't really know if Justin Ross is going to get cleared. I mean, we hope that he will be. He is playing in pads, so we know those things, but it's a lot different from playing in pads to playing full speed and getting hit. We know that, right? So thoughts and prayers go to Justin Ross and his family and this procedure and everything that's going through. We hope that he gets a medical healing and cleared and everything. But he's not out of the woods yet. But I think if he does get out of the woods, man, what a great lineup. We're already talking about it. If Joseph Ngata gets healthy, Frank Ladson gets healthy, we've already seen what EJ Williams can do. You put those 3 out there, then you throw in Justin Ross. Man, that is a very, very scary 4 wide receiver set right there. Well, throwing in a tight end as well is kind of scary too.
Well, I mean, you think about the development of the players behind those guys. You mentioned Ngata and Ladson and EJ Williams and Justin Ross. Well, look at a Joe. And I didn't truly know how big that kid was until I saw him against Georgia Tech. And I was like, that kid looks like a baby DK Metcalf. He's a freak. And I'm not expecting him to be DK Metcalf this year. He's still got a long way to go in his football development. But if he can just develop half that amount, he's a freak. And that's a backbreaker. That's a backbreaker. If you're a Virginia, or I'm thinking about the schedule now, if you're Louisville or NC State and you're trying to claw back into a game and you have DJ Uiagalelei just flick the wrist down the field and have this giant behemoth of a wide receiver just dunk on you in the end zone, then yeah, that's a backbreaker. And that's, talk about Brandon Spector and our freshman, Dakarian Bo Collins, Troy Stellato, who I have high hopes for. And what I've seen in this film, I love that kid's film. I don't think he's like your standard typical like Hunter Renfrow, Brandon Spector. Yeah. This kid's gritty. I like it. I like it a lot. So I compare him kind of to a Brian Hartline, who was at Ohio State a few years ago. I think he's going to be great. I think this could be the deepest wide receiving core in America, and I think this would be the best wide receiving core. If everyone's healthy, the best wide receiving core Clemson's ever had.
Yeah. I think it's going to be exciting to see. Stellato, another guy Alan and I did some film on. You go check out our YouTube channel, the Morgan Thomas Show over on YouTube. We did film on him. He looks great, super fast across the middle. You know, Clemson fans, including myself, have constantly talked about we'd love to see Clemson utilize across the middle a lot more. And you've got to have a lot of speed, but you also have a lot of guts for sure as well. So I think Troy Stellato is a guy I'm really looking forward to as well. So let's get in. Let's check out some chat real quick. Casey gets in and says, with all 11 starters back and the fact that Brent Venables was using a 3-man front a lot this year, to believe he'll employ a more 4-man front this year. You know, it really depends on what they're able to do with that penetration and how the offense that's across the field is set up, because we've seen that Brent Venables has kind of moved into a 3-3-5 or a 3-2-6. And, you know, it worked well against certain situations, against certain offenses. It doesn't work well against your Ohio States, where you have a legit good running back who is just licking his chops when he sees 3 down linemen and 2 linebackers, or even just 3 linebackers, especially when they can play the strong side of the field or make some motion to put you off balance and have more people on one side than you do. And then it really turns into those 39, 40-yard rushes. I know you and Alan have been about it the entire season this year and last season. Don't like it. I don't necessarily hate it, but what happens is when it becomes your exclusive or your base defense, I don't like it in that sense. I would like to see the 4 down linemen, 3 linebacker, 4-3 front, more of your base. I actually would like to see, to avoid the confusion. We've got John in here on YouTube saying about the confusion pre-snap. I would like to see just a base 4-3 cover 2 and make that kind of what Clemson does out of the gates, even in a hurry up offense kind of situation. Maybe they need to have something, and maybe they do, but it didn't seem like they did against Ohio State. It seemed like they were waiting until Brent Venables gave them the call, and by the time they got the call, the ball had already been snapped. So they got to do something to avoid that, because you got to think these teams are going to see that and say, well, if Ohio State did it, we can do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we're running a 4-man front, you would say it's more of a 4-3, I guess, 4-2-5-ish, because the nickel is more of a hybrid safety linebacker blitzer, a do-it-all. You know, you think about somebody like Trenton Simpson, not necessarily going to put him in the secondary, but he's going to be blitzing off the edge. He's going to be blitzing at different places to keep people guessing. Whereas if you have someone on the field of a similar build of Isaiah Simmons, he really can be put anywhere on the field, whether it's on the edge, as a nickel, or in the secondary. That's how he got one of his interceptions against Justin Fields in the Fiesta Bowl. So it just depends on the personnel that you have out there. But that speaks to the multiple looks. And I think, like you were saying, 3-3-5 is good. And I think that it can be used against certain teams, or to break tendency for a team like, I don't know, if some team has declared that they're going to be more aggressive offensively and don't necessarily have the personnel. Hint, hint, another team in our state. And you've played mostly base 4-2, 4-3, and then you want to switch it up on them just to throw off your pressures. Going to a 3-3-5 would look good, especially if they don't have the personnel to match what you have. So I don't from a mixing it up standpoint, I don't hate it, but I don't want Clemson, or I would be leery of Brent Venables leaning on a 3-3-5, especially when you get into more serious offenses in the playoff.
I can agree with that for sure. So we got a ton of people in. Casey, Bill, and John, thank you so much. Tanner, Al, thank you. Philip, Michael, for getting in over on the chat. Get in. Let us know where you're listening from, and we'll give you a shout out for sure. Like I said, we try to get to as many questions as we can throughout the night, and a lot of things to talk about with Clemson football, Clemson basketball as well. We'll hang on with Clemson basketball. Let me ask you this question before we get into basketball: is of those returning defenders? All right, so I'm looking at the Clemson depth chart now. Well, I did have the depth chart up, but I'm looking at the depth chart and I'm seeing that they've got all 11 starters and then Xavier Thomas coming back as well. So when you look at that defense that's returning, that's got to make you feel good as far as a Clemson fan goes. We know that the people in, across the nation, analysts are liking it. They're excited about it. So you got to be excited about it as a Clemson fan. But you've got KJ Henry, Justin Maskell, Tyler Davis, Brian Bresee, Miles Murphy, Mike Jones Jr., James Skalski, Balin Spector, De'Aaron Kendrick, Landon Zanders, Nolan Turner, Sheridan Jones, Andrew Booth, Mario Goodrich. So you have those guys there listed in bold on the defense. And looks like majority of those guys are coming back, especially those starters there that I mentioned. So of those guys that I mentioned, is there any that are, the most important guys that returned?
I'll give you two names that you didn't put on there that I feel like are going to be important to the development of this defense. I feel like Joseph Charleston and Malcolm Green are going to be two guys that you need to pay attention to this year. They're anchoring the secondary as far as the back end. They were young this year. They got exposed a little bit, but they're very talented. I think that if Malcolm Green and Joseph Charleston are able to take that next step, then you're shoring up a real need. At times this year, Landon Zanders and Nolan Turner were a little bit exposed. Now, their development, especially with Landon Zanders is able to develop a little bit. He could be a really huge asset. I think Nolan Turner, being a veteran presence, he really did improve his game this year, so I'm not going to knock Nolan too much. I had relatively low expectations as a fan going into the year for Nolan Turner, and he turned out to be a really valuable player. But I think in the end, if you can shore up that depth in the secondary, especially and the two safety positions with Charleston and Malcolm Green, then you're really going to see this defense shine.
Doug Gale gets in, says he's from Alberta, Canada. Thank you so much for joining in. You must be a Joe fan watching us from Canada, and we love him as a player down here in Clemson. So thank you for joining in, Doug Gale, over on YouTube. For me, it's got to start with James Skalski. So let us know in the chat what you think over on Facebook or YouTube. For me, it's got to be James Skalski, because when you look at when he wasn't on the field, how just poorly the defense played. Maybe that's something that Brent Venables needs to take a step back and say, is the middle linebacker, the starting middle linebacker, like so important that when he's gone, the defense kind of takes a huge step back. Now, I know they took a huge step back because also the son, Jake Venables, was out too. So I'm not saying that for sure is the main reason, but I would like to see, James be able to take a few snaps if he can. I mean, he plays almost every single snap and that can wear on you, especially when, hopefully this doesn't happen in 2021, but when you're playing almost every single snap and you're playing 13 games and the other team played 8 or 6, it can be a big difference. And so James Skalski, definitely huge for me. And I think that it really all starts and ends with him, because he's just been so great at riling the defense up, getting them ready, getting them amped up for what's coming up. So I got to put him as my most important guy coming back. Really for me too, I'm going to say DK. Like I said, I know people like to rag on him because of the passing performance against Ohio State, but I think when it comes to, you originally were anticipating replacing him, and that's why that they were looking for a cornerback so fervently, really. I mean, they had Jordan Hancock, Jordan Hancock left and went and decommitted and went to Ohio State. They immediately went after another cornerback, and it took them quite some time before they found Nathaniel Wiggins. And that was supposed to be the person that was, in my opinion, going to be replacing or filling the void, the roster void of DK leaving. Nobody can really replace DK because he's a former 5-star guy, great on both sides of the field, even good in special teams, but he doesn't get a lot of time there. But just his experience, his athleticism, and DK is one of those guys where how could you not want him on the field? He is a team player. I mean, I know he's been in the doghouse a few times and in the love shack, as Dabo Swinney would like to say, but this guy has been sacrificial for the team, giving up his initial position, moving sides, learning it quickly, being able to take over as a starter almost within weeks. So you can't discount that. That in itself, I love when people say, oh, or when Dabo says, we signed a 5-star recruit by getting him back. They said that with ETN, and we say that with some of these guys that are coming back, and it can't be more than true. I mean, it is exactly how I feel. I mean, I think that it can't be understated that the importance of returning a guy with that experience versus getting a brand new freshman that looked good on film, but you never know till you see him on the field. There's been plenty of guys who really good in high school film, but doesn't translate into college. We know DK does translate. So I'm excited for those two guys. Let us know what you have in the chat. Casey gets in and he says defensive ends got to eat. He's looking forward to KJ Henry. That's the guy he's got coming up. And then Al gets in and says, I will ask, is Spires coming back good or not so good? Well, let me tell you something. I've ragged on Will Spires many a time in this show. But if you look at him statistically, he's improved his average punt and his punt location and his accuracy, and I believe even his hang time year over year. Now, I thought Aiden Swanson was going to give him a run. Maybe it's a good thing that Aiden Swanson is there pushing him in practice. But again, it goes back to experience. It goes back to he has in-game experience in some stressful situations at that position. And so Will Spires, I'm going to say, is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see any problem. He's gotten better from 2017. Obviously, I think he'll be an asset. I wish he could just get his cousin Carson to have stayed for another baseball season. Jeez.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. All right. So next question I have up is we'll hold on to the basketball stuff till the end, but because there's a basketball game tomorrow night, so we'll lead into that going into the game tomorrow night. But some big news. We do have to address this here. We have to kind of approach this here. CJ Spiller, some coaching changes here. Let me start with that. Big coaching changes. Oh, by the way, if you're worried about Big Al, I've been texting with him as we've been going. Al is still having some technical difficulties on his end. So he says he loves you guys. He loves us. He misses us, and he's sorry he couldn't be here tonight. But he's going to try to get something going on with the camera. He was able to get into the chat, or get into the video feed, or into the broadcast rather. I could see him down here, but he couldn't get to get his camera to work. So he'll try that next week, and we'll get back with him. But again, he sends everybody his love on Facebook and YouTube, all the fans there. So back to the question. CJ Spiller moving from an unpaid role to running back position coach, which I think, amazing. I have a signed CJ Spiller jersey up here above my desk, and my first ever favorite player, I could say. And then obviously Deshaun Watson. Tony Elliott moving from running back to tight end, which I don't know. If I was an offensive coordinator, I really wouldn't want to be a position coach as well. If it were me, I would rather just worry about being the offensive play caller and doing that to my best of my ability, and just have somebody else run a position specifically. But hey, maybe Tony Elliott likes that. More power to him. And then Danny Pearman moves to an off the field role, per reports to Grace Rayner and some others, Larry Williams as well, will include a self-scouting transfer portal evaluations in that role. So now we know we've talked about this a few times. We know we have fans talked about this as well. Some of the old school people, Dabo Swinney, he was successful getting to where he is at by doing what he's always done. And there doesn't need to be any big changes. Don't need to worry about that. Well, here's the thing. You have to adjust to the rules and to the environment of college football. If you basically shut off that potential, or at least don't even entertain it, then, and other teams, i.e. Ohio State, are successful with getting Trey Sermon, then you are now putting yourself at a disadvantage, especially when it gets into a situation where depth is a problem. Now, we always like to talk about depth is a big deal, but Clemson allowing so many players to play and not running up the score with their starters like they could. But if depth is that important in that situation, I think depth is important when you realize you've lost it by going into any means necessary and trying to find the best player in the nation, regardless of if they originally committed to you or not. So that's my thoughts on the transfer portal in general. But I know a lot of fans out there have said, oh, he needs to stick to what he's always done and stay away from that and stick with guys that he can grow. So the question to you, Houston, is how significant is this change? Is this the big change that Clemson needed, considering they've, kind of fallen a little bit behind in the transfer portal, considering Ohio State was successful landing a transfer? We know Oklahoma's been successful a few times landing a transfer. What's your thoughts?
So I think this is a tweak, not a major change. And if people are like, this is too big of a major change, then you need to go back to the Danny Ford era. Okay. This is college football today. And in order to stay in competition, you have to adjust and tweak, even if you don't like it. Okay. Dabo even said it. He's like, I'd rather recruit my guys and build them and develop them on my own. But with the changes in the landscape, we're going to do what's necessary to be competitive on the field. Now, with that being said, and I think I should charge this to all Clemson fans, don't expect Clemson to run out there and grab every transfer that's out there or every 5-star that's out there. This is going to be very, very based on need, okay? So if Clemson needs a safety and there's no safeties, like I just checked, there's not really anybody that I would go out there and get, and there's 5-stars offensive tackles or 5-star tight ends, we don't really need a tight end. I know people were like, we need to go after Eric Gilbert. No, we don't. You need to throw the ball to your already you need to go to your already good tight ends that you have with Braden Galloway and Davis Allen. The other thing is about this is it's just a necessary evil about this. Like, you've seen Joe Burrow and Justin Fields torch Clemson. You just have to move in that direction, but don't expect it to happen overnight, essentially.
Yeah, let us know what you think over on Facebook and YouTube. I really want to know the fan pulse on this. Is this something that you're excited about? Is this something you're not excited about? Al, our Casey, Michael, Bill, get in there. Let us know what you think. John as well, get in there. Let us know what you think. Esley Pendleton, get in there and let us know, because we want to know what the fans think about this and how you feel as well. If we're completely off base, let us know. But I think it's a good thing. I don't think that if it's an opportunity there, especially, I think you have to make a decision when you see other teams doing it successfully. Now, they're, like you said, they're not doing it with every single player. And I don't recommend doing it with every single player. And I don't recommend getting as many as you can. But it comes to a point, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful to any of the current players, but it comes to a point when you're an elite program and your backup, your second string person, probably would not be a starter on, some of these mid to low level ACC teams. You got to really think, okay, do we really have depth at that position? And maybe that's what Danny Pearman's going to do. Maybe that self-scouting is going to be able to look at the depth chart and say, we got a bunch of juniors at this position, and some of these juniors, may not be a starter on any other team, and they're not going to be a starter on our team because we're going to out-recruit them. I know it's controversial to say. I'm not saying dump players or get rid of them or tell them to kick rocks or anything like that. At first, my thoughts were that, but I've kind of stepped back. Houston's talked me off the ledge of that. But I do feel like that if there's a transfer out there that maybe, would fit perfectly with Clemson as far as the positional needs. Didn't fit on the team that they originally, maybe they got out recruited at that team, but they would be great at Clemson. I mean, you're seeing players leave Clemson for those reasons. You're seeing DeMarcus Bowman leave, go back home to Florida. You're seeing Jordan Williams, leave and go to Virginia Tech. I mean, he's probably going to be a starter or close to it up there at Virginia Tech. So you're seeing players leave the organization. You just want to make sure that there's an equal amount, right? And especially with it being so much easier to transfer now, and with there being waivers given out like candy, it seems like may not be always a good thing to get every single person. But if there's a unique situation where you can go talk with their family, Dabo's going to do that. Talk with their mom and dad, talk with that player, and make sure it's the right decision for them. I think that's what's important. I think there needs to be a little bit of a mix. I'm not saying 80% transfers. You don't ever want to do that. But maybe it needs to be one or two players, not even every year, maybe one player every other year that really wasn't a good fit on the school they originally committed to and would be a great fit for Clemson, could come over as a good person, good family, things like that, good athlete all around. It'd have to be a really good fit. I don't want to just, take anybody out there. And there are those guys out there, so you do have to evaluate that. I will say on the other side as well, I think it's a good PR move to make these coaching decisions. One, CJ Spiller, a legend at Clemson, putting him at running back coach is exactly where he needs to be. Let's go ahead and get Brian Dawkins to replace, well, you know what I'm about to say, but I'd love to see Brian Dawkins be a coach as well. But I'm just saying I like to see former legendary players come back and be coaches. I'm not saying they should replace anybody specifically, but I would love to see them on the sidelines. And I think Brian Dawkins would be amazing for sure. That's just my opinion. But I will also say this. Danny Pearman, he had some off the field issues in the summer. We won't get into that too far, but you do have to think, maybe there was some situation where it's like, hey, we're going to move you into something different, maybe change some things up so it's not going to be as controversial, I guess, because you know how the media is with Dabo Swinney. I mean, they get on, even when he does the right thing, they get on to him. What do you think about Tony Elliott going from running back coach to tight end? Is that a big change in your opinion?
So I have a couple thoughts on this so I'll go to your original point about having legends come in at coaches. That's fine. But you look at what CJ Spiller has done. He's worked his way through the ranks of an analyst, off the field, all that, and he's proved himself to be a good coach. And there's several of those types of coaches that are still at Clemson that I'd love to see be able to get their shot. I know a name that got mentioned moving to a more prevalent role that hasn't come out yet is Kyle Richardson. I know a good friend of mine personally, name dropping here, Cameron Aiken. I'm hoping Clemson can keep him on staff eventually when there is a shakeup and Tony Elliott inevitably does leave to become either a head coach or an NFL coordinator or whatever. Keep him, because Dabo has said that he's going to be one of the greatest minds in college football. Well, if Dabo knows talent like he does, I expect him to know talent in the coaching ranks as well. So I'm not trying to diminish legends, but you also kind of get into a situation where if you just put names in positions and they can't develop, I don't know. It's not always the right fit. Now, going to the other point, we're talking about Tony Elliott, Danny Pearman. Danny Pearman moving off field, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think they're just kind of moving him less in front of recruits because it's going to be really hard to win a recruit when you're recruiting against can just Google Danny Pearman and that's the first thing that pops up.
The very first thing
that pops up. So they're going to move him off into a more off the field role. I know Dabo has been trying to kind of ease the tension there. He's one of his guys, so he doesn't want to do him wrong. But the other thing is, with Tony Elliott moving to tight ends, I think it's a dual purpose. It's not just to use the tight ends or do all that or self-scout, because the other thing we don't know is the ripple effect of what's going to happen with the Tennessee coaching job, or if there's there's 2 more NFL vacancies. If they dip in and get a college coach, what's that ripple effect? tight end coach is generally the easiest to kind of replace. You can plug and play, or if you have a great mind like Kyle Richardson or Cam Aiken that you want to plug in there, or whoever, if you want to go after an OC, you can reshuffle and put a tight ends coach there. I think that's for safety measures to be able to still do your job, still do your Clemson job. But if, Cincinnati or USF or UCF or a bigger job, heck, even Tennessee, I don't know, I wouldn't go there if I were him. But if somebody comes calling for him, he can take that, and it's going to be minimal backlog on Clemson itself. I think the good news is for going forward, I think he's going to observe a lot of these offenses that have hindered us in the past, like Joe Brady, Steve Sarkisian. I'd send somebody out to Kansas City. I watched the Kansas City Cleveland game the other day, and I could not believe the aggressive nature of the calls. I'd send somebody out there to talk to him, and then I'd send someone to talk to Jamie Chadwell. And I think they're going to do everything they can to create a unique and competitive offense that is going to be a problem for everybody next year.
Yeah, I mean, all great points there. I really, I can't disagree with anything. I agree with everything you said. Getting in the chat here, we've got, everybody seems to be agreeing with you here. We've got John, agree with Houston. This is just a tweak. Dabo will not compromise on player character and use of the portal. We got Al. I think Houston nailed it. Dabo is adopting to what he needs to stay to stay elite. He has always been willing to make changes and adapt. And this is just the latest example. He really needs to open the door when it fits. Bill gets in, says, I trust Dabo to go after and be able to sign players that he needs. Meanwhile, I celebrate that I'm not a South Carolina or Rocky Top fan and have to live with their dumpster fires.
Yeah, hey, Morgan, before you go into that, when we hit it big and we get that $1 million check, $1 billion check from WCCP, are you going to come to my house and drop off some money bags or some McDonald's bag full of money? Because I'd really appreciate that.
Well, if you really want me to, I can take about $25 out of the emergency fund and throw it in a McDonald's.
Fill the rest of it up with Monopoly. Yeah, fill it up with Monopoly pieces. Not even Monopoly money. Monopoly McDonald's pieces that are used.
Oh,
and then
man.
Put $25 in there.
Man, can you imagine if I was just, 6 inches taller and a lot more buff, I too could be getting McDonald's bags filled with money from Tennessee. I could have been us. Could have been.
If I had a little bit more athletic skill and was about the 14 years younger, then maybe I'd be able to get some.
That's what I'm going to tell my daughter now when we go out and play soccer. I'm going to say, hey, you know what? One day there'll be a college that if you're really good, there'll be a college like Tennessee that'll give you some money in a McDonald's bag, and Daddy won't have to worry about anything.
Yeah, and then there'll be a school like South Carolina come in and say, "We got whatever. Here you go. Here's an actual McDonald's bag full of food."
Don't kid yourself, Houston. South Carolina is sitting here like, how did you get the money for the McDonald's bag? We don't have any money considering we bought $1 million golden chicken with no spurs.
I know.
We got hoodooed into a golden hen.
You got $1 million golden hen in front of your stadium, and you can't put a Rush's down there near the stadium. Come on, man, that's the best thing in Columbia, and the only reason I go down there.
You are the Gamecocks, and you didn't even put a gamecock in front of your stadium. You put a chicken, a literal chicken. You're not fighting anything with that. But anyways, okay. One thing I did want to bring up real quick. This is something I thought was kind of interesting. Let me see if I can throw up the screen here. Let me see if I can throw up the screen. This is something new. This is dangerous.
Oh, Lordy.
I'm going to see if I can throw the screen up here.
Oh, hello.
Look at this. All right, so I'm on TigerNet, as you can see. And this is a helpless plug of TigerNet. By the way, David Hood, if you're watching, which you probably are, but if you are, then we want to say congratulations to baby number 2. Hope everything is great there. I believe Easton, you said on chat. So hope mama and baby are happy and healthy right now. Best luck wishes to you for sure and your family. But all right, so the question for you is, of the 2020 Clemson football signees, is there any that you're surprised we really didn't hear from? Okay, so let's go through this list here. We got DeMarcus Bowman, obviously, we're not going to talk about him. He decommitted, or he left and went to Florida. But you got DJ. What more do you need to say about him? How awesome was he? Miles Murphy, another guy, we've already talked about him. Brian Brzee, already talked about him. Trenton Simpson, we've raved about him. Fred Davis II, we got to see some playing time from him. And I think he's just going to keep getting better as well. Guy that you mentioned earlier, RJ Mickens. Didn't see much of him. I think about 37 snaps. I think I had down on my list here. About 37 snaps. So what do you think about that? Is he the guy that you feel like, man, we want to see him develop? Now, Mickey Kahn came out and he did say that he needed to be developed a little bit more. He needed to get in the weight room. Maybe that was some of the concerns, the holdback from him compared to the other guys. But you got EJ Williams, Malcolm Green after him. So he's kind of wedged in there at the top of this list as one of those guys that didn't get as much time as the others. So is he the guy that you're looking to see make a big step going into 2021? Let us know as you're looking at this list as well in the chat on Facebook and YouTube what you think.
I think a couple of the names that out of that 2020 class, obviously RJ Mickens is one that I'd love to see make that next step. I also want to see Sergio Allen. I feel like we're getting to a point where that middle linebacker section is going to be really full, especially with Levante Bentley and Balin Spector. What are you going to do with Kevin Swint and Sergio Allen? Those kids are freaks. They need to play. And then you got Jeremiah Trotter who coming in. That kid could end up being the backup to Jamie Skowski next year.
Let's stick to 2020.
I know. 2020 is tough. The main ones are RJ Mickens and Sergio Allen. You know, you went out. Sergio Allen was the first commit of that 2020 class. So what is he going to do? Is he going to come in and actually see the field next year? I want to see what Sergio Allen can do, and I want to see what RJ Mickens can do.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about Sergio Allen. Again, a guy list on here as well. Walker Parks, another guy that I'd like to see what he can get into and how he'll be able to do in his second year. DeMonte Capehart's a guy, and you mentioned earlier too, a Joe as well. I think this list is really stacked. If you really look at it, the 2020 recruiting class, Dabo Swinney did really well. Now these offensive linemen, I was reading some articles from some offensive line gurus out there, and they said, you know, the tough thing with offensive line is that it's so hard to translate from high school to college because you just don't know the amount of competition that they had. And also, a lot of the guys who are the best offensive linemen, they always get thrown into the right tackle, and they would never be a left tackle, and they would never be the quarterback's blind side in college just because of their skill set and their build. And so in high school, because they're biggest and baddest on the team, they typically get moved to, you know, being the blind side blocker for the quarterback. But then in college, it doesn't translate, and they have to move and find another position. And it was saying that a lot of these offensive linemen, you know, it takes them about 2 to 3 years to get to that point. And then most of the time you only have 1 or 2 years with them. Now there are some diamonds in the rough. I think, you know, Tristan Lee, obviously, and then Mitch Hyatt and Jackson Carman, those guys out there that they're kind of diamonds in the rough that are going to start immediately. But like Bill is getting in as well, he wants to see these big uglies develop. And it does take time though. But I do feel like when you look at this, Brian Tucker, Mitchell Mays, Walker Parks, Paul Cho, and John Williams, a guy some of the fans mentioned in the last show that we don't talk about enough. There's a ton of 4-star guys on this offensive line that have the height. I mean, look at that. Walker Parks, 6'5", 275. Mitchell Mays, 6'3", 306. Brian Tucker, 6'5", 305. All have the height and weight ready. Just need to get, you know, to translate that into the strength of the college game. And I think that Clemson got bit by a lack of offensive line recruiting, but they'll be able to make it up with this 2020 class once they become of age and they're ready. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, not just that, but what they're getting in 21 and 22, assuming that, I mean, 21 just signed and 22, they're in the boat. Generally, you don't see a ton of decommitments off the offensive line. Could change, may not, who knows. But there's beef on the way. I think you're going to see a lot. I think it's not a lack of recruiting. I think Clemson is still catching up with, okay, they won 2 national championships without super elite offensive linemen. You had Mitch Hyatt, and then, you kind of made some up as you go. Now it's being caught up. All right, you've got Walker Parks and 4 4-star linemen trotting out there that are big and bad, and they're ready to get after it. And then their backups are also, 4-star, big, bad to the bone kind of guys. So I think he's going to get there. You just got to be patient in the development there. And then also, you've got the transfer portal going forward, where if, say, next year or when Clemson does their evaluation of, all right, we need a right guard, let's go and see if there's one out there, and there's one, that's what they'll do. But I feel confident Clemson's going to get there with the offensive line.
So you feel like that the transfer portal will be better use in offensive linemen, or will be better use for the flashy skill players out on the edge?
It's just a need. I mean, I don't see how Clemson's going to need to get a wide receiver out of the transfer portal, considering what Clemson's able to get year after year at wide receiver. That, one case in point being this year, but you got injuries and all that kind of stuff, different things of that nature. You look at next year, you're going to be set at wide receiver. Maybe a running back every now and again. Maybe if there is a quarterback, if you come into a year after a generational talent like DJ leaves, and you see that there's another generational talent sitting out there versus a couple guys that you're still waiting on developing, or maybe they're young and they just need to work behind somebody, then you go out and do that. But I think for now, it's for need. And the need would be, more than likely offensive line, or in the secondary, in the back half of that secondary.
Yeah, I'm just looking through this list, and I see, like I said, I would say this with offensive line too. Going back to, it's kind of like the article I read. I can't remember what website it was on, but they were talking about how it's so hard to find a good one, and it takes so many years to develop them into being a good one, that the transfer portal might work really well in the sense that they maybe were on a team that's all they could get coming out of high school was that offer. They developed into a beast by their sophomore or junior year, and they're willing to take a year off to join a elite program, not only for the program's benefit, but for their benefit as far as like NFL draft prospect. And that's the thing, maybe you'll be able to get a guy who is able to use their time at these smaller schools and then leverage the transfer portal. Whereas normally you'd have to wait and hope that the guys develop in-house. This will be one where your in-house basically grows to literally every school in the nation. And then there would have to be rules around that too. Like how will you be able to talk to them, and, and not, you don't want to kind of like make it a wild, wild west free for all where you're stealing from these schools that are never going to be the Clemsons. But you do want to give an equal opportunity to these small schools and the larger schools, but also to the player as well. It needs to benefit everyone, however they decide to do it. But again, if you're watching over on Facebook or YouTube, we've been up for about an hour now. We're going to talk about college basketball, and then we're going to close it out for the show. But before we do that, let me tell you about our last couple of sponsors here. Let me pull them up real quick. We've got Daniel Weber State Farm, 518 College Avenue, Suite 190, Clemson, South Carolina, 864-722-9083. Daniel Weber State Farm for all your insurance needs, home, auto, property, business, life. He is a Clemson graduate. You can see class of 2011, fourth generation Clemson student or graduate there. So go check him out for all your insurance needs, Daniel Weber State Farm. Thank you, Daniel, for being a supporter of our show. Again, they're there in Clemson, so go check them out and support local business. And then we also have Heating and Cooling Services, Inc. Heating and Cooling Services, Inc., 864-224-7655. They can do all your residential and commercial heating and cooling needs. Go check them out. Talk to Jason or Mark Trammell. They will get you hooked up. They do not only business, but they do local residential as well. And they do not only your air conditioner unit, but also your heating units as well. So go check them out. Again, big time sponsors of the show. We really appreciate Daniel from State Farm and Mark and Jason from Heating Cooling Services, Inc. All right, so we're back again. Last question of the night. It's kind of ending on a sour note, but I know that Bill's going to love this. And that is the game coming up tomorrow night. Clemson versus the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. This is men's basketball. Number 20, Clemson, by the way. They play 7 p.m. Eastern time on ACC NX, which I guess that'd be probably Fox Sports South if you have it. But number 20, Clemson, 9-2 overall against Georgia Tech, 6-3 overall. Right now, the FPI has them, or the BPI has them at 56.9% chance to win. But as you know, Clemson just came off of a 35-point rout from Virginia after having two games off, having some COVID issues on the staff, not being able to practice the entire time, having some issues. They were able to practice. They couldn't have coaches there. A lot of things going on with the basketball team that were unfortunate. But we do want to give the basketball team some love. They are 9-2. They are still a ranked team. So what do you think? Now, they had 4 in a row, and then they turned into that last loss there. The most recent one against Virginia, where really, to me, you want to talk about a team playing a perfect game. I mean, what did they hit, like 15 3-pointers to beat Clemson that night?
Yeah, I feel like Clemson never, at least, I saw it. This is the 11th loss in a row to Virginia, which to me is, I know that they had COVID issues. And I know if they'd have lost that game in a manner that wasn't 35 points, if they lost by 10, 15, 17, even 20, maybe even 25, I'd be like, hey, they had COVID issues. They lost by 35. And some of those made threes. Look at the first shot they hit. Sam Hauser is Virginia's best offensive weapon. And Amir Sims comes off of him to guard the on-ball dribbler, leaving Hauser wide open, and he just hits a three. And it's just the way that it went. And when Virginia gets up by more than 2 to 3 possessions, it's basically game over. Unless you're an elite team like Duke with Zion Williamson or North Carolina or anything like that. It was disappointing to watch. And I know COVID's going to get brought up and all this kind of stuff, but like you gotta do better than 35 points. Like
I don't know, man. I lean on the fact that, I mean, they went 55.6% from 3-point, 60.7% from field goal range. That is, I mean, how are you supposed to beat that?
Well, I mean, look, it's a game-by-game basis. I just feel like this particular time we can give it a pass, but there's 10 other times that Virginia has done this to Clemson. And look, their offense it's pretty simple. It's old school. It's, to me, and it drives me nuts. Out of all the Blue Bloods national championships, I can't stand Virginia the most out of all of them. Duke, North Carolina, Virginia, because they run a Georgia Tech kind of offense, gimmicky defense, all that kind of stuff. It's a gimmick to me. And they benefited that all the way to the championship game. You can beat that team. Clemson can game plan to beat that team. You just have to hit shots. Virginia was daring them to shoot threes, and they were, and they couldn't hit them. Virginia knew Clemson could not hit a three to save their life, and it was like, we're just not going to guard you. Shoot threes.
Well, yeah, and Clemson not hitting threes to save their life. You know, I mean, now I did see Hemingway and Hunter Tyson hit a couple towards in the second half, so I can't say that not to save their life. So those two guys I seem to do kind of well. But if you look at it, though, Virginia's average 3-point percentage is 38.5. They were 55.6. Virginia's average just regular field goal percentage, 50.7. They were 60.7. So 10% more on field goal percentage, almost 20% more on 3-point percentage. Bill gets in, says the abysmal performance by Clemson basketball against UVA was hopefully an anomaly. For example, Tennessee 10-1 just lost to a 6-4 Florida, 75-49.
Whoa!
The Tigers will be back, and Virginia will cool off. So he feels like that was just an anomaly. Keep moving on. Reed gets in and says they only had 7 turnovers and 3 was by a reserve after they were up so big. And he also gets in and says they played a perfect game. And then Casey gets in and says it sets up for a perfect big win in the ACC tournament. I'd love to see that one.
I would too.
And he also says in the last they were at 70% from the field until the last 4 minutes of the game. So, I mean, it's one of those things where, you know how I said earlier about football, you got to be careful about all your losses saying that the other team played perfect. Well, this one definitely statistically looks like it. I mean, they played so much better than even their normal average. It was kind of weird, but I don't know if they're on the way down though, because Virginia now is, I believe, undefeated in the ACC. Yeah, they're 5-0 in conference now, 9-2 overall. So Virginia may be getting better as the year goes on. I want to see Clemson continue to hang on to the success that they've had as well.
Yeah, and I think Clemson needs to put this away quickly and go handle Georgia Tech. Don't make it close. Don't let them hang around, because Georgia Tech is a house of horrors still for Clemson in basketball. Doesn't matter if they field a JV team when Clemson walks in there; it's still a house of horrors. Go beat them.
Well, they got Jose Alvarado, who's a big time shooter, man, and he scares me. When you have a good point guard that can just tear you up, it's tough. And they actually have 2 point guards that can tear you up really well at Georgia Tech. So you got to be careful with those guys.
Yeah, I understand that. It's just I feel like Clemson has the most depth they've ever had at a crucial time in the conference history. The ACC is down, and Clemson is good. So go out there and beat who you need to beat. I understand Saturday might be a problem. You're playing Florida State in a revenge game for them, and Florida State's they're good. I watched them just pummel Louisville in Louisville's house last night. So losing to Florida State, I can understand, but you need to win your home games when you can, and you need to go beat teams like Georgia Tech and leave no doubt with that. I know Alvarado's good, but you have to have that game plan ready. Go win tomorrow.
And they are on a 4-game win streak as well. That includes the Tar Heels, Wake Forest, for Georgia Tech. So not going to be an easy out. It's according to Vegas, Georgia Tech is a 1-point favorite into the game. So that's a very close spread. By the way, I also saw this stat I thought you would like. In the last 10 years, I think this is from Bleacher Report. The last 10 years, Clemson basketball has only scored 53 points against Virginia in the last 10 years. Okay. In the last 10 years, Clemson football has scored 54 points on average against Virginia football. So, So the Clemson football team definitely putting up more points than the basketball team in the past decade.
Yeah, it drives me nuts. There's got to be – I mean, Clemson's playing better this year. I'll acknowledge that up until Saturday, I was excited. Clemson had rattled off some big wins. Their only loss was a close one up in Blacksburg, and then you just go out there and just fart one out like that. You gotta come back and you gotta drain this down the toilet. Go pummel Georgia Tech. I know they're a 1-point favorite. Ignore that and just win anyway.
All right, guys. Well, that's the end of the show tonight. We really appreciate you joining in on Facebook, YouTube, wherever you're watching or listening, or if you're after the fact on the podcast. Again, Alan was not able to get his computer to work tonight, so he couldn't join us. He was ready. I promise. He had a lot of good insight. Maybe we'll get him on in the middle of the week to do kind of a solo show. But Al, we miss you, man. We hope you see you back next week. Thank you so much for the regulars that came in on the comments and the chats. We really appreciate you guys as well. Make sure you check us out. We're going to do every Tuesday night, 8 p.m. going forward so that we can multicast onto the Roar and to our main Facebook page so we can be a part of that group there. Want to reach as many Clemson fans as we can each week and talk about not only Clemson football, but again, all basketball and all other sports as well, Clemson athletics in general. I, for one, cannot wait for softball myself.
Bro, you know what 31 days away. Now, I probably can't be there much this year. 31 days, first pitch, Doug Kingsmore, Clemson gets the dub. Can't wait to watch Clemson improve what they were able to do. I felt like last year was going to be a special season, given how their offense was starting to come into play a little bit more. I think if you can build off of that year, it's going to be a special season for the Tigers on the diamond.
One thing I look forward to is watching the girls softball team and listening to my friend Mark Childress call the game. Those were some really good nights there. And I love that they play on the weekend. I can't wait to go see them in the stadium and play and watch what they can do. But I really appreciate, the spring sports that are coming up. Looking forward to it. I think baseball, what do they start out with? Bill, you have to tell us. What do they start with? Cincinnati? I think is their first game out the gate. So we'll look and see. And hopefully we can get some guests on and talk about some Clemson baseball as well. Because, I'm not really that educated in Clemson baseball. I'm a little bit more of a Braves fan than that. By the way, talking about the Braves, Don Sutton passed away. I saw that. Chipper Jones just posted that in Twitter about an hour ago. Thoughts and prayers go out to the Sutton family and Atlanta Brave Nation. I mean, I remember as a kid in Anderson, South Carolina, my mom, we had this backyard. I had the pitch back set up. I would throw the baseball to it. It would bounce back to me. And I would do that all night. I would do that during the Atlanta Braves game, listening to Don Sutton call the games. I would turn the back porch light on and just play till it got too dark and my mom made me come in. And so whenever you lose a great voice like that and a great player in general for baseball, it is a sad day. So again, thoughts and prayers to Braves Nation out there as well. Don Sutton passing away. But again, thank you so much for joining in, Facebook or YouTube. We will see you next week where we can hopefully talk about some more great news from Clemson football and Clemson baseball and basketball and everything else in between. But again, thank you so much on behalf of myself and Houston. And as always, Tiger fans, we'll see you at the top of the hill.